But at the end of the day, if you're implementing a system like this because you have bad umpires and you can't get rid of them, that's the tail wagging the dog for me.
High drive. Left field. It is out of here.
You got to have a solid team. You got to have health, and you got to have at least 2 or 3 position players and at least 1 or 2 pitchers to have career years.
And I think
that's what it takes.
I agree with you.
Viva Cuba Libre! Welcome into episode number 5 of the Picked Off Podcast with Mike and Aric. I'm your host, Bitter Mike Babbo, with my partner in crime. He may hate all things Astros and Cowboys, but he's got a lot of love in his heart for everything else in baseball. Mr. One, Aric Schuler. Aric, how you doing? How was your weekend?
What's going on, everybody? The weekend. I'm ready for the weekend. I will tell you that right now. It's been a long week. I'm ready to talk a little bit of baseball. I'm honestly ready to get the season started, if you want to know the truth.
I think so, too. Spring training games actually officially started yesterday. Cubs and Dodgers. We've got a couple of games going on today, and all 30 teams will be playing games starting tomorrow.
Well, did you see that fan yell out to Aaron Judge when he was taking batting practice?
Swing the bat!
Swing the bat, and then he did and hammered one. So
he goes yakka.
Yeah, I liked it.
Loved it. So the fans are already in full throat. We will continue our division preview. This week we will do the AL Central in reverse order of 2024 finish. We're going to go over the changes to each team's roster, their projected over and under wins, and sprinkle in a few hot takes. But first, the news that broke earlier in the week of an experiment going on in the spring training ballparks throughout this weekend. They are going to be testing what is called the ABS system and the implementation of the ABS Challenge experiment. What's ABS? It stands for the Automatic Ball Strike Challenge System. Robo-umps. Since the dawn of time, since I think 1986 is when the NFL instituted instant replay. Major League Baseball finally instituted in 2008. The current system has been in place since 2014. There was a very consequential play that resulted in an overturn in the 2014 World Series between the Giants and the Royals in Game 7 of that World Series. They also call it the Hawkeye. It's a pitch track technology. Now, they don't want to take away the total human element, but they do want to implement something because there have been too many balls and strikes that are not balls and strikes. And as you can see, if you're on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, they rank a lot of the umpires out there, and some of them are pretty bad. And so this is a compromise, right, Aric?
I don't know. I'll tell you. I want to know what you think about this. Obviously, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But I'm a traditionalist, and ever since I was in high school, ever since I played ball, you had to know your umpires. You'd get to the ballpark and you'd be warming up in the bullpen, and you'd look out there, and if every major league pitcher knows who's behind the plate before the start.
Yeah.
And I think that's a dynamic about baseball that I love. I like the fact that this guy has a low strike zone, or this guy's a friendly umpire to the hitter. I like that aspect of it. I like the mental side of the game. Mm-hmm. I think that's a dynamic that I don't think anybody thinks about hardly anymore. And look, I'm not saying these umpires don't make mistakes at all. All I'm saying is, I don't know how many times I've seen, and I've watched a lot of baseball, Mike. I don't know how many games I've seen that come down to some ball and strike situation. And so somebody has to show me the data on that before I get into removing the human element of a game that I'm incredibly nostalgic about.
Well, I think that every player will agree, and I think you will agree, is that we understand that umpires have high strike zone, low strike zone, wides, narrows, whatever. All they want is consistency, and that is the thing that has driven the players crazy. And as these umpires have gotten older, and keep in mind, because of their union, and it's very strong, it takes a lot to get rid of a bad umpire.
No, well,
Charlie Williams was there forever. Laz Diaz is one of the worst umpires ever known.
There's no doubt. It's one thing to not be able to get rid of poor umpires. That's really not what we're talking about right now, right? So I'm not about trying to change the protocol because you struggle to get rid of people who are bad at their job, right? We can kind of settle that. But is just like Aaron Judge goes out, and sure, I want consistency too. I want Aaron Judge to go 4 for 4 every game with 3 RBIs and a double and 2 home runs. That's what I want every game. But sometimes Aaron Judge goes out there and strikes out 3 times. That happens. And sometimes the home plate umpire shows up and has a bad night. That's part of the game that we love. That aspect of the game is intriguing to me. I think it puts some onus on players to know who. I mean, there were umpires that called me when I was in high school. I hated them. They squeezed me. They were narrow. I was a guy that struggled to throw strikes anyways at that age. And so for me, I think it's a dynamic that I love about the game. I hope they don't take too much of the human element out of it. That's my only point.
Well, I think that with this compromise, I think that we'll keep the human element into it. So what are we talking about here? The home plate umpire will still call balls and strikes with the Hawkeye working in the background. A player can challenge an umpire's call if he feels it's wrong. Now, what I mean by that, what player? Only the hitter, the catcher, or the pitcher. Nobody else. The managers, the base coaches, the fielders, they don't have a say in it. And that, I guess, replay challenge or appeal has to be done immediately. The player has to either tap his cap or his helmet. And that Hawkeye, the results of the Hawkeye will be shown up on the Jumbotron, or if you're watching on TV, the broadcast immediately to provide a ruling. And it's very, very subtle. Each team will be granted only 2 challenges per game. That's it. Right? So they're going to have to use them judiciously.
See,
right?
my thing is there's 120 pitches thrown a game, Mike.
Like, there's more than that.
I mean, I don't know what the number is.
200 per team.
Is there really? Is that the average?
When you consider, I mean, right now, starters are going 100 pitches in 5 innings.
Yeah, I guess that's what
right?
I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how many pitches a starter throws.
Yeah.
But at the end, okay, so if the number is 200 a game, right? We're talking 1% here.
Oh yeah, less than that probably.
Yeah,
if an umpire is at 99%, he's not doing his job.
Right, but I'm just saying it's not moving the needle here. Having 2 challenges a game is not moving the needle.
And to that point, they have been testing this and they have implemented this in the minors and independent leagues since 2019. They have found a 51% success rate in challenging. Not much. Right?
Seems a little low to me.
They did implement a total robo-ump. And what they found is a lot more walks. They didn't want that. Then it flies in the face of their objective to speed the game up, right? So they don't want to do that, right? And they also want to keep the human aspect of the catcher's ability to frame a pitch. That's an art that they don't want to lose. Let's see how it works. It's only going to work in spring training for right now. They're going to get a lot of feedback from all the players, the coaches, the managers, and the umpires as well. Anything that has to do with the umpires is going to have to be approved by their union.
That's where it's going to go to die. Yeah. But you heard it here from me. I'm opposed. I would be more of a fan of taking the game backwards than I would forwards here.
Understood.
I know that's not popular these days, but I love the game of baseball. I like all the different elements, all the different challenges that you face. I think it is the most complicated game in existence, and that's because I think my dad always talked about it. It's a game of inches. It's a game of a lot of inches.
It's certainly the hardest to play. My experience, I actually witnessed this in a AAA game in June of 2022. And when it first got implemented, when a hitter challenged a strike call, I didn't even know what was going on. But it was immediate. I'm okay with getting the calls right as long as it doesn't influence the flow of the game and disrupt the flow of the game. So we'll see what happens. But my experience with it, I thought it was great because I'm honestly sick of the bad umpires being out there. And look, you're right. We should be able to get rid of the bad umpires. We can't do that right now.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm a fan of this type of technology. Is I'm a fan of it being a grading system, for your umpires. And I'm a huge fan of it. They probably already use it like that. But at the end of the day, if you're implementing a system like this because you have bad umpires and you can't get rid of them, that's the tail wagging the dog for me.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, enough of that. Let's go right into the AL Central. We'll start with the bottom, like we said, the Chicago White Sox. 2024 was a year to forget. They went 41-121, tying a major league record. Their over/under this year is 52.5. They have a $74 million payroll, the third lowest in the majors, and of course the lowest in the AL Central. They had a carousel last year of managers. Pedro Grifol, after finally snapping that 21-game losing streak, beating the A's back on August 7th, or August 6th, I should say. He was fired 2 days later, going 23-89 for that season. They brought in Grady Sizemore, who was an assistant coach. He took over. He finished the season at 13-32. They had a lot of candidates to choose from for their next manager. They settled on Will Venable, 9-year former major leaguer. He coached for the Chicago Cubs, and he was also the associate manager for Bruce Bochy in Texas the last couple of years. They've acquired a lot of guys, right?
Yeah,
a lot
whatever
of
that
flyers.
means.
Chris Getz, their GM, has been busy cleaning house, right? He signed Joey Gallo, the outfielder, to a minor league contract. They signed Michael A. Taylor, speedster, not much with a bat, but he can go get out in center field. 1 year to about $2 million. They signed starting pitcher Martin Perez, formerly of the Red Sox, 1 year for $5 million. And they avoided arbitration with one of their best players, third overall pick, Andrew Vaughn, their first baseman, for 1 year and $5.85 million. They also took a flyer on third baseman Bobby Dahlbeck. I remember him coming from the Red Sox organization.
Red Sox, yep.
Right? He was a top prospect from them. And then they signed Austin Slater, who I watched many years with the Giants. He's a Gold Glove caliber outfielder. They signed him to a $1.75 million 1-year deal. Their losses, the big one, Garrett Crochet.
Gone.
Talent pitcher. Gone. Right?
Yep.
They traded him away for 4 prospects. Those 4 prospects are now at the top of their farm system.
Yeah, and that's sad. That's sad.
Right.
I will tell you, these guys are playing the long game, and you know how I think about the long game.
You don't like it.
I will tell you right now, these guys are existing in the Cubs' shadow. That's the only way you can get away with performance like this.
Yeah.
My opinion is this franchise right now has very little direction, very little desire, very little discipline. I'm calling another 100-loss season right out of the box.
Yeah.
I will say, even though I think they're going to lose 100 games, I do think they hit the over. They put together one of the worst seasons in MLB history last year.
It's going to be hard to repeat.
That's right. They were eliminated from playoff contention in mid-August. I don't think that's happened since the 60s.
Yeah. They had 3 losing streaks in excess of 10 games, including the record 21. They started 3-22. They were swept in the season by 9 teams.
Yeah, it's just a.
Yeah.
It's a really bad season.
It's going to be all the way around, and pitching, hitting, everything.
It's going to be very difficult for them to replicate that type of season. They're going to play better this year. They're in trouble. I don't like it at all. I don't like this type of performance from any major league team. Very disappointing, especially a team in a city as sports rich as Chicago.
Well, Jerry Reinsdorf needs to sell this team.
Yeah, he needs to sell.
I mean, he's been the owner for 53 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he has nobody in line in his family to take over. He doesn't have a son that's in the organization or anything like that. So if he dies tomorrow, then it'd be just.
But they're 20 years away from the last World Series. When did they win?
2005. They swept the Astros in 2005.
Yeah, 20 years.
But they did win the division in 2021.
No, I agree. Those guys that won that division are long gone.
Yeah, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert.
They got one left. Who's left?
Luis Robert.
Yeah, Robert.
And they've been trying to trade him for the better part of a year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone. I wouldn't be surprised if Andrew Vaughn is gone. Nick Madrigal, they traded him for Craig Kimbrell in the 2023 season to be a setup guy for Liam Hendricks. That blew up in their face.
I do think they're going to be a seller. They're going to be a seller. They're going to go out and trade some of these guys they got on the roster that can play, that may be able to help a contender out here shortly, and they'll get some prospects back in return. But once again, this is a long game. Chicago is a very proud city. The only way that this is even feasible is that these guys are playing in the Cubs' shadow, as I mentioned, and I think it's going to be a long season for White Sox fans. Sorry to my pal Chris Vela, but it's going to be a long season for the White Sox. Yeah, it's going to be a long season. I think they're going to finish in the basement here, last place, but I do see them hitting that over because I think it's going to be hard to replicate that poor performance from last year.
Roger that, and I agree with you. Minnesota Twins, they ended up 82-80, fourth place in the AL Central last year with a $140 million payroll this year. Manager Rocco Baldelli is in his 7th season. He does have 3 division championships in those 7 seasons, but their GM Tad Levine has really made some moves that really haven't panned out. Their over and under right now for this year is 83.5. They did acquire Ty France to play first base on a 1-year, $1 million deal. They did sign former St. Louis Cardinal outfielder, Yankee guy, Harrison Bader. They signed relief pitcher Danny Colombe for a 1-year, $3 million deal. Not much else did they do,
Mike,
really,
I'm actually
losing people.
Yeah, I'm calling this standing pat. And I'm going to tell you, in this league, I don't think even when you win the World Series you can stand pat.
Well, the reason why they're standing pat is they're hoping that Royce Lewis, Byron Buxton, and Carlos Correa finally are healthy.
Yeah, they're relying on injuries. They're relying on guys coming back from injury. And all I'm saying is those guys that get injured, they're injury prone. I think standing pat in this league is unacceptable. I believe they're going to be in the basement as well in this division. I don't think you can stand pat in this league, even if the primary reason that you think you struggled is because of injuries. I think the other thing they have looming over them is an ownership change.
Yeah, the
right?
Bullads.
Yeah, is that going to happen? And I think that's going to...
it needs to.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a distraction. There are other teams in the division that got better.
Yeah.
That went out and made moves to get better. I don't think the Twins did that. I still think the Twins are actually favored. Are they favored to win this division?
They're favored to win the division, which shocked me.
I can't believe that. I don't see that at all. I got the under here, and I will tell you they could be in a world of hurt. I don't think they're going to lose 100 games, okay? But I'm going to tell you I don't think they compete for a wild card or for this division.
Wow, I'm going to slightly disagree with you. I think that they will hit the over, but I don't think that they will win the division. The one good thing they have going for them is those three that I mentioned are all healthy coming into camp this year, which is the first time that's happened. Royce Lewis, their third baseman, Brian Bruxton, who's probably their best player, they're probably their most indispensable player, and, of course, Carlos Correa, who they signed to that 6-year, $120 million deal a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to my point. I agree with you. If those guys are healthy, my only point is I thought the Twins went out and did not get better, and they have some clubs in this division that went out to make moves to get better. And those other clubs that got better, they already outperformed the Twins last year.
They had a huge collapse last year. By August 17th, they were only 2 games out of the Central. They were 70-53, and they went 12-27 the rest of the way.
Down the stretch, yeah.
Right. And if Rocco Baldelli doesn't bring home a division crown, wouldn't surprise me if he's shown the door.
It takes everything. It takes everything. I don't think you can ride these divisions. And this is one of the more intriguing divisions for me in baseball. I really like this.
It's up in the air.
Yeah, I really like this AL Central division. I think there's some good teams in there.
Yeah.
I think there's some young teams in there. So I'm pretty excited about it. But I will tell you, I don't think that you can go out and have a great starting rotation and have a lacking bullpen and maybe, a pretty, mediocre lineup and think that you're going to make deep runs. I think it really takes a solid team all the way down from relief pitching to starting pitching to your lineup to really make deep runs.
You got to have a solid team. You got to have health, and you got to have at least 2 or 3 position players and at least 1 or 2 pitchers to have career years.
And I think
that's what it takes.
I agree with that. I haven't heard anybody put it like that, but I agree with that. And I will say the thing that I'm starting to notice more and more is you see these great clubhouse guys linger to teams that win, and I think the clubhouse is. In a grueling season that's 162 games long, having some quality clubhouse guys is imperative. I think it plagues my team. It plagues the Yankees. I don't know how many good clubhouse guys they can get in there, but I will tell you, it's more important. It is incredibly underrated to have quality clubhouse guys.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned quality clubhouse guys because this next team is loaded with them, and that's the Kansas City Royals, who coming off a very disappointing 2023 season where they lost over 100 ball games. They lit the world on fire. They went 10 games over 500 to finish out the campaign. They went into the playoffs, 86-76 last year. They were tied, actually, for second, and they have a $126 million payroll. John Sherman, since he bought that team from the Kauffman estate for $1 billion, he has pumped a bunch of money into that team. He's hired J.J. Piccolo. He brought him up, so showed Dayton Moore the door, and he just extended Piccolo as the GM and the president of baseball operations to a 5-year extension through 2030. They picked up Matt Quatraro's option to be the manager through 2027, I believe. Their over-under is only 82.5. That shocks me. I'm hammering the over.
Hammering the over on that. Absolutely.
There's a lot of promise with this team. They're the deepest that I've ever seen in this division. They signed they extended their rotation, which overperformed as far as I'm concerned. Michael Wacha, Mike Lorenzen, they exceeded expectations. Chris Bubik, they signed him, but the big one was Cole Reagans. That guy came out of nowhere, and he was a Cy Young candidate.
Yeah, he finished fourth in the Cy Young, I think.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and they had who finished second in the Cy Young?
Jonathan, was it Jonathan Gray?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah,
It's slipped.
From Minnesota.
From Minnesota. Yeah, it slipped my mind. But here's
Sonny Gray.
Sonny Gray. Well, here's what I'll tell you. The Royals, I like them a lot. We are just 365 days removed from me and a good colleague of ours, Nick Medina. We're talking about the Royals being a 100-loss ball club.
Yep.
He says, how long is it going to take us to get to 100 losses? The Royals overachieved. I think I'm all about it's because of the shortstop. I think he is the man. I think hot take here, I think he wins the MVP this year, finished second in the MVP race last year, I think. I think he's going to win it this year. I like the Royals. I don't know if I'm calling them to win this division. but I really like the Singer trade for India. I like India's high on-base percentage. I'm a guy that likes
rookie
guys.
of the year.
Yeah, I like guys that get on base. I like guys that find their way to get on base. I think that's really productive.
Yeah.
A big fan of some of the moves they've made. Huge fan of Bobby Witt. I think he fits in Kansas City. I think he's a franchise player that says, hey, I'm more about this team being successful and this city being successful and this franchise being successful than I am about my own accolades. And I think that's the exact type of guy that you need in a place like Kansas City. I got the over on the Royals. Yep. I would hammer the over, and I really like what they've done this offseason. When
you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes wearing your jersey to Royals games, come on. I love the Singer for India trade just like you do because he's going to push Michael Massey to be better. Mm-hmm. He's going to push Michael Garcia to be better. I love the signing of Carlos Estevez. 2 years, $22 million. That guy
That's
saved
a steal.
He's
an absolute steal.
Why did Philly let him go? He saved 26 games last year.
Yeah, that guy, that's absolute steal. So we're both very high on the Royals, it appears. I will say...
don't break our heart.
Yeah, I will say, I don't know if I have them to win the division, but I will say...
Oh, I do.
When guys get to the playoffs, however they're going to get there, right? It really matters how hot you're playing. How well are you playing when you get into the playoffs? I think these guys make a deep run. Still like the Rangers, but I think it's the Rangers and the Royals in the ALCS for sure.
The most important player for me, believe it or not, is their backup catcher, Freddie Vermin, because he's going to have to spell Salvador Perez. I love Salvador Perez. You know what I love about a great catcher, and he's probably the best in the American League. He's passionate. He calls a great game. He keeps those pitchers in check, but he's also 34 years old. And so they're going to play him at first. They're going to play him at DH. But the more Freddie Vermin plays, the more he keeps Salvador fresh for the playoffs and for the stretch run and the dog days of summer in August, the better they're going to be. If he goes down, like he did in 2021, I believe, that's going to hurt. Hope that doesn't happen. The team that they tied, the Detroit Tigers, also 86 and 76. They got a slightly higher payroll this year at $138 million. Managers are A.J. Hinch. He was exiled after the trash can gate.
Absolutely,
and
exiled.
All he did was go to Detroit, and he has won there. GM Scott Harris has made some really good moves. He came from the Giants organization. He was their assistant GM a couple of years ago. The big deal they signed, Jack Flaherty, the pitcher. They brought him back after he wins a ring with the Dodgers. 2 years, $35 million. 28 games started. He was 13-7 with a 3.17 ERA. Love that deal. Love the Gleyber Torres signing as well.
Yeah,
to go to second base. I like that a lot.
I like the moves that the Tigers have made this year, but I do think we're going to have a little bit of a reality check in Detroit. I don't think I thought they overachieved last year. I don't.
They strike out too much.
They are not productive hitters. They're not productive hitters, and I don't think they only had one player with an OPS above 750. Only one, Riley Green. I think that's a problem. That's eventually going to lead you to lose.
He's young, so he's going to drop off.
It's going to eventually lead you to lose ball games.
Spencer Torkelson has got to show up. He's their first overall pick a couple of years ago out of Arizona State. He played third and first for the Sun Devils, and they sent him down.
Yeah, but I will say, the only saving grace here for the Tigers, and if they're having to go to this is like going to the bullpen in the third inning. If they're having to go to their farm club early in the season and their farm system is loaded.
It's stacked.
Yeah, it is loaded. But their only saving grace is if they pull up some of these kids out of the farm system and they perform. Their lineup really needs some help. I just don't see their farm system this year being enough to save the day for them from a lineup perspective. I feel good about their rotation. I think their bullpen is underrated, but I just don't think they did enough this offseason to become a perennial playoff team right now. I still think they need to get these guys in their system over the hump. I think they need to get them into the bigs. I think they need to get a couple seasons under their belt. So my opinion is I think they do underperform this year versus last year. I do think they actually going to flirt with that under.
Yeah, I think their defense needs to improve as well. Gio Urshela goes to the A's. He's no longer manning the hot corner for him. They're going to replace him with Josh Young's brother, but his footwork needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
At the shortstop position is a guy who drives me absolutely crazy, Javier Baez. They're actually thinking of platooning him and starting Trey Sweeney instead. I think that might be actually a good move.
What the heck is going on with Baez?
He's a knucklehead.
Yeah, that's my issue. He's a knucklehead.
He can't make the routine plays. He tries to make the flashy plays. It's all over the place.
I think he's just wasting talent. I like Baez a lot as a player. I think he's got really, really great upside. I think he's a very good baseball player, but he is an absolute, you nailed it. He's a knucklehead.
Yeah. I mean, ever since he signed that big, massive 6-year deal with them, his average, his on-base percentage have decreased by 40 points. His slugging percentage has decreased by 130 points, his OPS by 170. These are just major drop-offs. And his defense is absolutely god-awful. He's led the majors in errors 2022 and 2023, and he was on a pace last year to lead the majors in errors until he got hurt.
Those drop-offs and numbers are gaudy. Yeah. I mean, those are gaudy. But I mean, I feel like every time I turn on the TV, I see Baez making some bonehead play. So very frustrated. So at the end of the day, Tigers for me underachieved this year. I think it's a little bit back to reality. I'm not saying I don't think they have a bright future because I think they do. I just think Royals and the Indians, Guardians are
the Indians.
That's good. That's good. But I think they have too much this year. They've done too much in the offseason, and I really like those two teams over the Tigers. Now, can the Tigers slip in there with a wild card?
Sure.
That's what's awesome about the wild card.
There's 15 teams in the wild card.
Yep, there's a lot of teams that can make it. But right now I have them hitting the under, and I have them kind of backtracking versus last year.
Yeah. The little engine that could and always does finally is the Cleveland Indians. They went 92-69. Good enough for first in the division. Manager Steve Vogt is in his second year. Mike Chernoff is their GM. Their over-under is also a pedestrian at 83.5. They lost the ALCS 4-1 to your Yankees after beating the Detroit Tigers in the divisional round. They got back Carlos Santana for the third time. Yeah. He spent the first 7 seasons in his major league career with the Indians after getting traded by Philly.
And he spent 2 years with the Twins, is that right?
He spent last year with the Twins.
Last year, okay.
Right? That just didn't work out. I mean, he's bounced around everywhere.
Yeah, he's embraced being a journeyman. Yeah, he's embraced it.
Yeah, but you know what? He's 39, but he still picks it, and he's still an excellent on-base guy. Of course, their best player is Jose Ramirez. I mean, stud.
Yep.
I mean, he's just an absolute hitting machine.
Yeah. Great attitude. I'm a big fan. Wish he played for my team, but he doesn't.
No.
But I will tell you, the Guardians, I think they made a mistake getting rid of Josh Naylor. I don't like that trade.
That was a head scratcher for me,
I don't like that trade at all, basically. And here's why. Number one is Naylor had the corner locked up for you. He was one of the best performing first basemen in the league. Just a very good player. Incredible clubhouse guy. Great to his teammates, great to the fans, great for the franchise. And I'm not a fan of who they got in that trade. And so my thing is Josh Naylor leaving is going to be worse for them than it is going to be better. And then I think they're going to be extremely reliant on their bullpen. I think their starting pitching is suspect, so they're going to heavily rely on that bullpen. And like I said,
Mike, the bullpen was the best in majors.
It was.
And it got stronger, too. So I like what they did with their shoring up what was one of their strengths by getting Slade Ciccone.
But in the dog days of summer, you're going to need everybody.
Hopefully, Shane, don't call me Justin Bieber, shows up, right? Hopefully, Tristan McKenzie regains his 2022 form because he fell off the map over the last couple of years. He's now penciled in to be their 5th starter. Tanner Bybee, their starter, apparently he's penciled in to be their opening day starter.
Yep.
I mean, he's got some arm talent for sure. I just think that they didn't do enough to keep that division crown. I think that the Royals will still slip in over them. Losing Naylor hurt. They also DFA'd Carlos Carrasco. I think it was in August. No, actually it was in September. And then they traded their second baseman, Andres Jimenez.
Yeah,
he's a solid player.
I just think this team has relied heavily over the years, and they've been relevant for a good few years now. Yeah. I just think they've heavily relied on keeping things light and overachieving.
Yeah.
And going in and being a gritty baseball team, a team that runs the bases well and does things well. And so I think Naylor walking out the door, I think him getting traded is a big deal for this team. Now, hot take here, I would not be surprised if their young second baseman gets pulled up, Travis Bazzana.
Yeah.
Or is it Bazzana or with a B or
Bazzana,
a P?
yeah.
Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if he got pulled up, especially if they get out the stretch in those dog days of summer and they start struggling a little bit and they need a little pop and they need to get the kind of fans reinvigorated and the team reinvigorated. You may see him get pulled up because he's stud.
Yeah, another guy that needs to step it up too is their infielder Gabriel Arias. He's going to hopefully fill the hole that Jimenez created by getting traded. He's got a chance to crack this lineup finally. He's got a ton of promise, but he needs to improve his hitting and his approach and his work ethic. So.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. If you don't have that early on in your major league career, it's only going to get harder with as much guaranteed money as they're throwing around.
No question.
End of the day, I got the Indians to hit the over. I like them to win the division just slightly ahead of the Royals, and that all comes down to Ramirez. I think he's just a great player and a great leader in the clubhouse. Like I said, this team's going to miss Naylor, and if they don't make the playoffs, I think that's going to loom. If they don't win this division, I think that's going to loom pretty large for management.
Well, like I said, I've got the Royals to continue to improve with Bobby Witt Jr. and pitching staff continues to improve, and I got them winning the division. I got both of these teams hitting the over. I got the other three teams probably hitting the unders.
Yeah, it's a very intriguing division though, because I really do think the Tigers are I do think they're going to slip back this, but I do like them as a franchise moving forward. I think the Royals are in a great spot. Baseball's better when the Royals are good. I don't care what anybody says. And I like the Indians. Those are three quality teams that I think all of them could compete for this division.
Great. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Picked Off with Mike and Aric. Aric, you got any thoughts?
No, not really. I'm pretty excited about getting the season going. There's a lot of interesting divisions in baseball this year. Like I said, we need to get past spring training and get some games going. I can't wait for April to get here.
Sounds good. Next week, we will preview the AL East.
I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I'm loving it. I'm excited.
Can't wait.
I'm excited. I got some hot takes on that one, too.
Already. Well, we'll see if the big moves by the Red Sox can get them out of their 3-year funk and contend for a title, or if those moves create dissension and dysfunction in Beantown.
Which I hope for.
Well, of course you do. Well, I think they're already doing that on their own.
Yeah, they don't need any help from me, that's for sure.
We'll also see if the newly revamped Yankees lineup will address the serious flaws that were exposed by the Dodgers in the Fall Classic, and if the Orioles can rebound from their epic second-half collapse and finally turn promise into a parade with that young, talented roster. Finally, we will highlight one starting pitcher in the AL East who has a stat that I have never seen before in my 50 years of covering baseball. It will blow your mind, I promise you. And then we will continue on with the National League. Sneak peek here, hot news coming off the press. Today, ESPN and MLB announced that they will not extend their TV deal, and at the end of this season, they will be done. So our episode, airing opening day weekend, will talk about the state of the game, on how to grow the game and increase the appeal, especially of the youth out there.
Absolutely.
We want to thank all of you for listening in. Big shout out to our boys Chris Vela, Max Rosinski, and Nick Medina for their insight into their respective teams, and to all of you out there for your feedback. We want to make this show better because we do it for you. You can catch us every week on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on X at @TheBitterMike or on Instagram, BitterMike1963. Time is precious, so we appreciate you spending some of yours with us, talking the great game of baseball. Have a great weekend, everyone. See ya!
See ya!